I want to thank you for joining Next Generation Leadership Competencies as we talk about the future of work. I'm Kurt Merriweather, the head of Inclusive Innovation and Partnerships for the Diversity Movement. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Donald Thompson, who's the CEO of Walk West and the Diversity Movement, and our special guest from JLL, Kimmery Ankerbrand, Managing Director, Raleigh-Durham Office Lead, and Nakara Carter, Vice President, PDS, Raleigh-Durham Submarket Lead. We want this to be an interactive discussion, and so please, as we go through the conversation for the next hour or so, please drop your questions in the Q&A, in the chat, in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll try to answer as many of these questions as we can as we're going through the discussion in real time, and we'll also reserve some time at the end to handle questions. If you're referencing this webinar on social media, please use the hashtag #NextGeneration or Next Leadership, all one word, NextGen Leadership, all one word, and tag us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you all for being here today, and let's dive right in. Donald, you've had lots of different conversations with senior leaders about the importance of leadership, especially during what we're experiencing with COVID-19 and other things going on in the country. Can you talk about what led to the creation of the 5 pillars of next generation leadership and how those competencies create the roadmap for organizations to address what's going on, but particular leaders?
So Kurt, thanks for having me. I'm very glad to be here. And one of the things that we found in the research that we've been doing and the work with clients across the board and really independent of industry is that everyone is looking for what I would coin as a corporate athlete, right? People that can do a multiple set of things and skills to be successful in an ever-changing environment. It's no longer the ability to kind of create this nice little tidy sandbox of excellence and then gently work up the food chain of success. And so as we looked at how to help our clients market and message and grow their companies, we also understood that we had to build leaders along the way for this moment. And so one of the things that we did is we talked to a lot of different company leaders. You and I spent some time, and then we had some folks do some real powerful research, and we came up with 5 pillars. The first being multi-generational, multicultural leadership, the changing landscape of talent acquisition and leadership growth. The second being social media mindset. And how do you communicate in this new digital world? And everyone has to maintain and grow that competency. The third, and I would argue one of the most important, although they're all important, is that learning agility. How do you process information, apply that information, and then track the results of that new learning in live time? The fourth being a technology aptitude, whether it is Zoom, whether it's your CRM, whether it's your recruiting technology. Every business is a technology business. And then the fifth pillar is we all have to think more nimbly like startup CEOs. We have to understand how the changing landscape requires us to make decisions faster and innovate at a much more faster clip. And so the summary is we looked at our client landscape, we had a lot of discussions, and then you and I did quite a bit of research, and we came up with these 5 elements that we've seen help companies grow leaders in their organization.
Don, thanks for that answer. And so, Nakara, many organizations, as they're facing what's so, we're in the middle of, I would say that if you said in May that we would be experiencing what we're experiencing now, nobody would have predicted that, right? And so it's really changing the way that business fundamentals for a lot of organizations exist. So they're redesigning their business models in real time. Mm-hmm. And so we thought we would be back in the office by now. We thought we would be having these re-entry plans. That hasn't happened. And so how's that changed the role of physical place in work? And how are different generations dealing with that as we think about that new reality what we're facing right now?
All right, Kurt. Well, thank you so much for having me here as well. Excited to be able to talk through one thing that I'm passionate about, which is space. And so when you ask that question, 2 words come to mind, culture and values. And, as part of the white paper, we talked just a little bit about our workplace transformation process, but that we've seen over the past few years kind of change the way that, companies are looking at space. They want space now that really helps to to tell the story about their overall culture and the value that they put forth as a company. And I don't simply mean just having, your value statement placed on a wall somewhere as part of a branding effort, but really looking at how your values and culture translate into the space where your people actually work. A perfect example of that is our office space that we just recently finished up back in January. We moved in January 29th. We all went home on March the 13th. And so we were there, I'd want to say, Kimmery, probably 6 weeks. But leading up to that, we spent a lot of time doing, some really heavy programming, all part of our workplace transformation process. We looked at, some smaller focus groups. We looked at how we were currently using our old space and what we needed to change around that, right? And JLL really prides itself on being a company that thinks about the people first and real estate second. And so we followed that model 100% as we looked at designing our own space. And what we found is that we needed more space to connect, different spaces to connect, which supports also the concept of, the multi-generational workspace. Some folks really wanted to have heads down space. We needed, of course, to have some conference rooms. But some of us, we found that some people really wanted to go and lounge out a little bit and feel like they were kind of working at home, right? So we got some spaces that also have, a couch and, a kind of pull up laptop table as well. And we also found, which we'll talk about, I think, a little bit more, but, technology also played a really big role in that too, making sure that we were able to connect, because we are a company that is a global company and we do work across the globe out of our office. And so we wanted to make sure that was a piece of that too. I think the biggest change that we made was just through our, I'm going to call it our largest collaboration space, but our break room, right? And so that is a space where we, have lots of creative collisions, whether it be folks in there actually eating lunch or individuals just wanting to have an impromptu meeting. So we thought about, one, we were already doing that. Our old space, I don't want to call it horrible, but it definitely left a lot to be desired. And so we thought about that as we built out that space. And now in our new office space, in the 6 weeks that we were there, we actually had a chance to host some events. They were events for our vendors along with our clients. And so, that was another big piece for us as well. And so, as I said earlier, we definitely focus on the multi-generational because we had focus groups that included, our office does have all 4 generations working there. And so everyone had an input as part of that process. And so, you asked the question about creating safe collaborative spaces, and I call those spaces safe because they're spaces that our team helped to create, right? And so, safe means something very different to every person. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone had a space that they felt like they could go to and be productive. So whether, once again, it be heads down, whether it be collaborative, whether it be lounging out and, being able to watch or, talk to someone in another country, via Zoom or some type of video screen, we wanted to make sure that happened. So that was our process. And we're doing that a lot for our clients as well. We're spending a lot of time up front through workplace transformation, really focusing on what's not working. How do you envision your new space? And then what can we do to make that happen for you?
Yeah, and I think I would add to Nakar's comment there is really around going forward. Companies are having to identify what's the purpose and the function that each organization actually wants their workplace to serve. So before people get into what's my square footage, how many offices do I have? Again, we don't know where the shoe's going to drop on what next generation of workspace looks like, but we know every company is going to have to really peel back the onion and really decide what's the function and what do we want to accomplish in that space. And it might be drastically different than what those goals were pre-COVID.
Very true.
Kimmery, I want to build on that last point that you were just making is, certainly when you were talking about building space and you had a focus group and you got input from multi-generations, you had a collaborative process in building that space. And then the world changed significantly after that. And so what are you seeing as you think about your own teams and how they're reacting to what's happening, how that's changing, how they interact with space and some of the programming that you may have had planned that you had to shift a little bit as a result of that. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to add to that, and based on your other question you had, you know, JLL re-entered the market mid-May, mostly in June. I think about 75% of our offices are open across the country. And our Raleigh-Durham office has one of the highest percentage of actually use within the confines of phase 1 and phase 2. I don't think that's any surprise when I talk to some of our other bigger markets. We had just moved into brand new space that was very thoughtful. Again, we didn't know COVID was going to happen, but I think it proves all the things that we did were well received and wanted to allow people to come back in, and it was a safe environment. But to answer the latter question, like Nakara said, you know, we've got 4 or 5 generations in the workforce, depending on what industry or company you're in. And we always tell people, I think people have been really hung up on the millennial generation. And I think when you still hear that word, you think of the 25-year-old coming out of college that wants their cake and eat it too. But the reality is the millennial generation is turning 40. I think by some of the stats, I'm one of the oldest millennials, and I turned 40 on Monday. So millennials are turning into decision makers, and they're turning into leaders, and they're actually, I think they're the biggest generation in the workforce today. And so I think that they're becoming more mature, again, bigger seat at the table. They're not that 25-year-old out of college. And now we've got the Gen Z generation coming behind them, coming out of the universities and starting to enter the workforce. So just a side story here to kind of hit this point home. JLL moved forward with our national internship program this year, which we came close to scratching given the environment we're in. We had 260 interns nationally across the country, and it was a 4-week program, 80 hours, 100% virtual. And I remember when they launched it, I was like, ooh, that just doesn't sound fun. Sure. You know, how is this going to work? So we had 9 of them in the Carolinas, and there was a lot of national programming. So the pluses were they were able to really focus on some of those softer skill training that you might not have gotten at an individual level. But some of the overwhelming feedback from them nationally and here locally was, you know, appreciative of the opportunity. We were just glad we had something to do and something to put on our resume. But all of them said there was nothing that could replace being in person in the office, watching leaders, watching the 20, 30, 40 somethings operate on calls and in presentations. So I think the takeaway there is a lot of leaders, call it 40, 50 plus, think, oh, well, Gen Z, they're tech savvy. They talk on text, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. They don't pick up the phone. They don't call anybody. But the reality is they're very tech savvy, but they are hungry and thriving for people, interaction, good old fashioned, you know, in-person meetings. And so I think moving forward, no matter what your business is, leaders are going to have to figure out, how do I, you know, incorporate both of those mindsets into the workforce going forward, because they want both of them. And I think they need both of them to succeed.
Don, I know you've been doing quite a bit of work, just talking about myth busting for a minute. As we look at Gen Z and millennials and all the stereotypes that exist. And I know you've been doing have your own focus groups, if you will, yeah. With Gen Z and folks who are millennials. And Kimberly talking about the fact that age range, we kind of misthink around millennials. But could you talk a little bit about what you're finding in terms of some of the myths, and then what you're really finding in terms of what the actual reality is based on your discussions with folks in younger generations?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I mean, one of the things that, you know, if you want to think about a phrase, right, we're trying to all integrate and create this really powerful employee experience, right? And that has to do with the culture of the organization. Space is a huge part of that, how they're treated in onboarding, and really the overall opportunity for growth that somebody has within a company, right? And so in order for me to do that as a leader, I had to realize, all right, what are some of the blind spots, right, that I have, right? I have kids that are Gen Z, but I really hadn't thought about it in the construct of employees and different things. So I have 3 different groups of 5 to 7 Gen Z young people apiece, all different majors in school, some just graduating, some still in school. And so we had a good, diverse group. A couple of things that I found out that were not shocking, but affirming and really good to hear. Number one, you think about Gen Z and sometimes you stereotype and you think social good is where they're driving their joy and value alone. And that social good is good, business, financial growth equals bad, right? And we put them in that box. It was very clear, very focused, that they believe the companies they want to work for in the future blend social good and financial success. They very much believe that a company's goal to be profitable, successful is fine. They have a higher standard of leaders to be able to do both. Have a culturally sensitive organization that has a high standard for financial results. And so that was one of the things that I heard very loud and clear from multiple folks. The second thing is that they are not all tech savvy. That a lot of times when we as the kind of the older generation, right, will ask them questions about this, that, they go to the magic Google machine, right? And they figure it out. They bring back the answer. They've learned something new, but they were very quick to say that they don't have all the technical answers. And they kind of embrace the fact of that stereotype, and it gives them an advantage in working with senior people sooner because they ask them things assuming they know, they go find out, and they've built a new relationship. The third thing that I'll say that I got from these focus groups is it gave me hope for the future. They're not as judgmental as some of their elders. They're looking to hear the opinions and the thoughts of others. They're open to a multicultural mindset, as well as ethnicity and sexual orientation and all those different things. So the diversity of thought was encouraging to me, right? If you ask me an opinion on anything, I've got something to say, I've got an opinion, I've got a strong point of view, I got you. But to win in the marketplace, I have to leverage diversity of thought so that creativity is an engine for the growth of a creative business that I run. I was glad to see and hear that was something that was very powerful and informative. So if you're gonna hire Gen Z and you don't have a collaborative environment, it's gonna be tough to recruit because they don't believe they're always right, but they do believe they should be heard. Mm-hmm. And that's a subtle construct. They don't believe they're always right, but they do expect to be heard.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
I like that.
That's a powerful point. And as we were talking about technology and being savvy, one of the things that we talked about when we were looking at the 5 pillars is the role of technology. And we know that technology is both creating and destroying businesses on a daily basis. And so it's something that needs to be paid attention to as a leader in unlocking new opportunities. And so Nakara and Kimberly, if you could start, starting with you, Nakara, what are some of the things that you're seeing as you apply technology in your own business and also with the clients that you're working with, how those things opened up new opportunities as you're thinking about the application of technology there?
Well, we're fortunate because JLL has been on this huge technology journey, I want to say, for the past 5 years and really focusing on how we run our business. And Kimberly, I'm sure will talk a little bit more how it, translates for the transaction side of the house. But the work that I do over on, project management, we recently invested, I can't call it the number, I'll probably be shot for doing so, but we invested a lot of money in a project management platform that allows us to be able to serve our clients more effectively. It is software that we're able to maintain budgets and schedules in real time. And if anyone's ever worked on a budget and Excel spreadsheet, you know what a circular reference is. So it gets rid of all those kind of things. So it makes us a lot more efficient and it makes us accurate, right? Which is important for the work that we do. And so that has probably been the biggest driver for technology on my side of the business. There have also been some tools that have been developed that we use now interactively with our transactions team that make it easier for all of us to sell business. And so I'm gonna let Kimberly talk a little bit more to that, but it has been, Kimberly and I have been in the same office now for about a year, and I can't tell you the number of pitches that we've been on together where we've really been able to drive home that technology and how it's saving so much time for our clients and for ourselves and helping them to make really quick and informed business decisions.
Yeah, I'll pile on there. And Nakara, she mentioned we've been on this technology journey, and I will kind of back up 4 or 5 years. So we were at our national sales conference, and our leadership brought 2 gentlemen out on stage and said, hey, they're going to be in charge of kind of our technology and innovation initiative going forward. And I will tell you, we all looked at them. They were Silicon Valley guys, developers. They were not in suits. They did not have a tie on. I think one had shorts and slightly disheveled hair and a puffer vest on. And I will tell you, we all looked around and were like, are they kidding me? And these guys know nothing about real estate. And our executive said, our goal is to revolutionize the commercial real estate industry via technology. And once again, we're like, guys, we're a real estate company. Like, we don't do technology. Stay in our lane. And fast forward 4 or 5 years, one of those guys actually was one of the original developers of Google Maps. And I think when somebody asked him, like, why would you take a step back into an industry that's, you know, not as flashy and as exciting as what y'all are doing at Google? And he's like, because it's an opportunity. It's one of the last industries out there that has such room for innovation, and it's a challenge. I want to be part of that. So I think fast forward to where we are today, and our entire firm is very grateful that we had innovative leaders 5 years ago, because what we have today was not built overnight. And like Nakara said, we're still on a journey. It's not perfect. It's like the iPhone 11 version of it. It didn't look that way the first day. We would be dead in the water right now without the innovation and the foresight that our leaders had 4 or 5 years ago to kind of build a technology platform, just not internally, but also client facing. And Nakara talked about it. You know, it's saving our time, our clients saved money, time, and mitigating risk, but it's also providing a lot of transparency to the process, to the data, to allow a broader group of decision makers to build consensus more quickly. I think the other thing to add there, and I think somebody might have mentioned too about it, sustainability. I think 2 things fit in that bucket. I think inherently when we hear that word, we think of recycling, green energy, solar panels, you know, LEED certified buildings. But 2 areas where I think our team has really said, you know, it's innovation and diversity. Those are business imperatives these days, and they are part of a company's sustainability footprint moving forward. Actually, Debbie McEnany, one of our global board of directors, who's new to the table, she was the one who kind of pointed out that definition of sustainability. And I was like, wow, you're right. It's really that innovation and diversity. So yeah, companies, I'm not, I look forward, but I'm not a huge dreamer, if you will. But I think no matter what industry you are, you have no choice but to look forward and try to figure out how technology can drive your business, not just internally, but externally with clients. Because we have no idea what's going to get thrown at us 2-3 years down the line. And this current environment has proven you better be putting work in 5 years prior to be able to kind of field those fastballs that were all being thrown.
Don, could you talk a little bit about your thought process? And I thought Kimmery talked about this in a really powerful way when we're talking about innovation and sustainability. So I want to start with the innovation piece first. And as you evaluate technology, a lot of times people do think you have to have the puffer vest on and you have to do these things in order to innovate. But everyone needs to know what's going on to be conversant in technology. And so how should leaders be thinking about knowing enough to make the right decision, the right business decisions as they start evaluating technical options?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different things from a technology standpoint. And I've run technology companies and worked with developers and engineers and computer scientists and all that good stuff. That's not what we're talking about, right? You don't have to write the code to feel the value of the code. And so what we're talking about is the value contribution of technology, right? How can you be more efficient and effective using tools that help you make smarter decisions, more informed decisions faster? And so when you look at the technology that your company uses, if it takes 10 emails, 5 different disparate spreadsheets, then maybe Google Docs is something you should adopt, right? And so it's not really a function of being able to build the technology you need, but understanding the problems that you face, being able to ask smart questions, looking at what's in the market for your market, and tinkering. Because you as a user actually have the dominant thought process that's required in the technology revolution. One of the things I learned from several of the software developers is if you have a problem, technology can solve it. It's just a function of time and money, right? Time, money, aptitude, right? So the problem can be solved. The secret sauce is determining what problem you want to solve with technology. And that comes from the user perspective, the things that you do in a repetitive nature. More importantly for executives, what kind of data do you want about your business that's too hard for you to get today? That's a great way for you to think about technology, because then what you want is better dashboards, better reporting, better insight. So if you consistently ask your team the same questions and your reporting from your system is lacking, that allows you to think about what technology solutions can make that information more rich. The other thing that I would say in terms of technology is it's not some scary thing, right? It's really a tool in the toolbox to help you do your job better. And really talking tech is really more about talking outcomes that you want. The how-to is certainly where your engineers, your developers come into play. But where they even need to start is what's the use case, right? What data do you want now that you don't have? And a lot of times, and this is really important, most people think technology and they think new. A lot of times the technology you already have can be retrofitted better to do the job it was meant to do. A lot of times in technology, people overbuy, so the systems are more complex than required. And so if you really take a step back in what you want the technology to accomplish, it doesn't always mean you need to buy new things. You might need somebody to help you use what you have differently, right, to achieve those goals.
Right, and that's the heart of innovation, actually. It's not new things, it's taking the things that already exist, but figuring out how to use them in a way to create scale. And so that's a very powerful point. And so Don, I want to come back and jump back to what Kimberly was talking about with this notion of diversity and sustainability. And so you're the resident Elon Musk on the panel, CEO of two companies at the same time, both Walk West, the diversity movement. And
that was not by design, by the way.
And so I think that's because this idea of building multicultural, multi-generational teams is so critical. And so what I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about, starting with you, and I definitely want the panel to do this in a roundtable way, is what are the ingredients when you're thinking about building a multicultural, multi-generational team? Why is that so important? And why are you wearing two CEO hats to go make that come true?
So I'll start with the former question, which is the easiest, right? In terms of multicultural, for me, it was really simple, right? If you can do the job, you get the job. And I was in the hunt for people that were passionate about the work that we were doing in the marketing space and that were forward-looking in how they could grow their personal career in a team construct, right? How somebody could be fiercely ambitious personally and then collaborative to work on a team to get a job done. So I'm looking for characteristics of winners in the workplace, right? And when I find those, I want to find people that want to succeed more than they need to be right in every meeting or every instance. So I want to find people that understand that the best idea winning is right for the client. And these are mindsets, right? These aren't gender, these aren't generational, these are mindsets. And then when I found these mindsets, I naturally found them in a diverse group of people because I was looking past the obvious. And so it counterbalanced my innate bias like we all have, because I was very zeroed in on the type of characteristics I was looking for, number one. Now, number two, and this is important structurally, right? Because one, it's a little more theory, this is very important structurally. Don't complete a hire until you've talked to a diverse group. That doesn't mean quotas. That doesn't mean hiring people that are not qualified. What it does mean is you got to be disciplined enough to hold your process open until you filled your process requirements of talking to a diverse group of candidates before you decide. And that may mean holding a position open a little longer, a little more pain, a little loss of productivity. But what you do is you teach your team that that's important. And it's amazing how much faster I get a diverse group now. Because now in the fabric of the businesses that I run, they understand that standard is we truly cast a wide net. The final thing in terms of your question, and Kurt, I appreciate, is running two companies is fine, but I have great people that help me so that it looks like I can create magic on the fly, right? It's really not about me. I represent two organizations, but I represent a group of talented people that make me look timely, on point, detail oriented. A lot of things I'm not on any given day. But the fact of the matter is, because the standard of who I want to bring on board the team is high, then I have ability to have high expectations in what we can do, that we can do the work that we do today while we dream, plan, innovate for the future. Because that's the kind of talent that we want to bring in and recruit. And so I appreciate the question. And I don't think I'll be two CEOs for too much longer. But anyway, it's all good because I am tired. So it's, but thanks for the question.
So I want to piggyback on what Donald said. So I feel like, Donald, you focused a lot on the recruiting piece and actually getting those individuals into the door and what that looks like, right? And I think, you know, for us at JLL and for myself, the big piece is just that retention. And so it's around learning and educating, right? And training and understanding where you currently are and what the need is, and just really identifying those gaps, right? And being honest about the gaps, and, you know, engaging in quality conversations with the people that you work with, and being intentional about making changes that need to occur within the workspace. So yeah, and for us at JLL, you know, we've got a number of BRGs. I want to say there are 8, Kimmery, that we have that span across a number of different, you know, opportunities for individuals in our company that don't represent the majority. And I would challenge companies that, you know, that may not have individuals that kind of fall into the bucket of a typical BRG, that you go ahead and form those before you even have those individuals as a part of your staff, right? So if you know, are a company that's struggling to get, you know, folks of color into the office, or you're, you know, a company that's struggling to have, you know, veterans be a part of your programs, go ahead and form those BRDs, because those allies are already set up and they're going to start doing the work, and it's going to speak volumes to anyone that wants to come and work for you, because you've already kind of put your money where your mouth is. But, you know, going back to JLL a little bit, those BRGs have proven, you know, to be an amazing resource for us. And, you know, if you go to our website and look at, you know, why come work for JLL, it's there. And, you know, it is not one of those things where we're just checking the box. We're really putting, you know, funding behind them. You know, we've got support, you know, executive support behind them as well, that I think is really driving that retention. Those are the kind of, you know, those kind of organizations help to create safe spaces for individuals that may fall into one of the categories of being multicultural or multi-generational.
Yeah, and I'll finish up that thought, Nakara. I think both people said intentional. This doesn't happen organically or by chance. I know, Donald, you said no D&I pep rallies. Like, even if you say it's the goal and you want it to be part of your company, like, it's hard work. There is no easy button. I've kind of collaborated with some thoughts on a few people. Bob Manikin, we call him the professor. He said it best. He's like, organizations have to clearly articulate, promote, encourage, and expect that diversity be part of a company's DNA. Otherwise, it won't be built, even if people are very well intended. And so that expectation word really was a light bulb for me. Like, you have to expect it. And so I think one area where we've moved the needle here recently back to making it part of your DNA and part of your business strategy, not a side project. I had somebody tell me a number of years ago when I was talking about some of our diversity initiatives, and she was like, it sounds like a hobby of yours. And I was like, oh, you mean a hobby? She was like, well, is it tied to the business? And I was like, well, it's a D&I initiative, and we've got some great D&I folks in HR. She's like, no, it's got to be tied to the business. And we even had some clients, I've kind of said recently, it needs to be leader-led. We've got a lot of great leaders in HR and the D&I function, but she was like, the set client said, no, it's got to be people who are responsible for generating revenue that need to have their skin in the game, because those are essentially the influence leaders. But what we've done at JLL is, you know, Nakara mentioned, there's such a focus on recruiting, and that has been one of our top 5 business priorities for our brokerage business across the company for 2020. And what we did in the last 2 months with executive buy-in is we expanded that priority to be recruiting, retention, and diversity. So it's a 3-pronged approach now within that initiative. now we officially have diversity tied to the business. It's not on the side. It's not a sidecar. It's not a hobby. It is tied to the business. And that was a huge, we still have a lot of work to do. We are then forming a committee of 25 leaders that are responsible for revenue to partner with our HR folks to figure out what is our action plan, what are our focus. And even before we do that, we're going to go into the business and we're going to survey our diverse population to figure out what are we doing well and where do we need room for improvement. Because even though I've been deeply involved in this conversation for 5 or 6 years, I've got blind spots now. So, you know, step one, tie it to the business. Step two, get a committee that has power and influence within the business to actually implement it. But the third step is the most important one. Before we even, the 25 of us could get together and come up with some really good action items, but we've told our leadership, before we do that, we need to go into the actual business and get really good data and feedback from the people that are 22, 25, 30, maybe even ones that have left the company. Let's circle back with them and gather data from them. And then that will drive our action plan going forward. But again, it's the intention. It's not going to happen by chance, and it won't happen organically, even if people's hearts are there. And it's going to take a lot of work. There's no easy button.
That's awesome.
That was very well said. This is you know, one of those sessions where I'm taking copious notes.
It's like I'm right. Seriously.
As we're doing the panel, because you're saying some very powerful things that we can take some insights away from. And that is a good lead into as we're thinking about this notion of sustainability. We want our organizations to be around for a long time. That the most important asset that we have is our people. And so there's a stat that said more than 50% of leaders don't believe their organization's talent development initiatives are building the skills and capabilities that are needed for the future. Now, how do you help your own organization grapple with that? And then as you're working with clients, how do you help them solve that challenge? And Kimberly, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think the one thing that came to mind here was very specific, and it's about feedback loops. What I realized was, and I talked to Emily Larkin, she's an executive at Abrigo here locally. She had some great things that I'll share. But I think the days of a year-end talent review in November, December that is needed to trigger a bonus or not bonus is really not an effective way of providing feedback to people. It needs to be continuous throughout the year. It needs to be an environment where you can provide what you're doing well and what you need to work on and what you should continue doing. So Emily starts off and has all these conversations with her people multiple times during the year. And it's a start, stop, continue conversation. And so every one of her employees knows when you come into that, that's going to be the framework of the conversation of, hey, doing a great job, but maybe you should start doing X, Y, Z. Let's stop maybe doing A, B, and C because it's not, you know, maximizing your potential. And these other things that you're doing great, let's continue them. So I think that's imperative. Diverse talent or non-diverse talent is making sure people have that feedback loop so they can learn from their mistakes and move forward, because I think a lot of times you just see these check the box talent reviews at the end of the year when people are tired and it's the holidays and it's just a formality. We've got to figure out how we do it throughout the year and have it really be a way for people to learn and grow. I've always told people, I think early on in my career, when I'd ask people for feedback, and I think they were afraid to give constructive feedback. And so I'm like, I'm not doing everything right. And I feel like that's detrimental if all you hear is you're doing great and good job, Nakara, I love you. No one's perfect. And so we all need to kind of figure out where our room for improvement is. And I would say working with clients too. I've had a few projects where I like to check in, and maybe I'm not on the project, but as a leader of the office call the client, how's it going? We're midway through the project. Mm-hmm. How can we adjust now midstream? I don't want to have the conversation at the end of the project and hear, well, these 2 or 3 areas you guys could have improved on. I'd rather know midway through the project that we can kind of pivot and redirect. So again, that kind of continuous feedback loop throughout, not just one time at the end of the year, I think is really imperative to help grow talent. Again, diverse, non-diverse, baby boomer, Gen Z, I think they all fit in that bucket.
That's awesome. That's good.
Cara, Don, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I would add just for, once again, JLL, I mean, we've got a really strong global leadership project. And so we went out and just kind of did a survey of 200 people globally, leaders within the company, to find out what they really wanted to see in leadership. And so the one thing that we found was that we need to separate that talent development, where we're looking at, helping people to lead themselves, right? So what does that look like? Is it the soft skills? Is it some of those hard skills? And then secondly, looking at how we support them in leading others. You'll hear, if you've ever worked for JLL, you hear this term a lot, especially in leaderships. We this kind of player coach mindset, right? And so it's all about, you essentially bringing in business. I know Kimberly and I both deal with this, but also being able to make sure that your team has everything that they need to succeed. And so, it's just that, we offer up a number of different series around that. As I said, some focusing on yourself, some focusing on, how we help our employees to develop as well. But I think Kimberly hit the nail on the head around the whole, leading others. I mean, we can't wait until we get to the end of a year and we're looking to, award a bonus based on, like a 1-year summary of all the work that's done. I think it needs to be a continuous feedback loop. And we need to be doing it on some systematic basis so that, they're not being surprised at the end of the year that their review is not coming back as shiny as they thought it would, right? That should not be a surprise for anyone as part of that process. So I just wanted to add that around what JLL is definitely doing to grow our leaders.
Well, and another thing to add to that, I think we talked earlier about the Gen Z wanting in-person and technology.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got a great talent development leader, Pamela Harrington, who's worked on a lot of things. And what we found was, I think the mindset was all these younger generations want the talent development all to be online. And what we've realized is they want a mix of that, but they also want in-person training as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've kind of talked to our HR team. They're like, well, I thought everyone wanted to be technology driven. Well, they do, but they still want that in-person training and talent development. And so I think leaders have to figure out how to mix both of those in, which is, can be a little challenging, but they want to see both sides of that equation, if you will, to kind of make sure that they're maximizing the opportunities on the talent development side.
Yeah, I would add a couple points to that, in that the feedback loop being continuous gives the employee the opportunity to change the narrative for the year. And so if the feedback is not glowing and there's work to be done, it's so much more positive to be able to say, all right, we've got 2 quarters left. We can do these things in Q3, can do these things in Q4. That end of the year conversation is so final. Right. And so it doesn't give any room for hope for the future necessarily. The other thing that I would say that I like the way that JLL is doing it and inspired by it, the younger generation want all, and you just described it, right? Like online, offline, they've grown up in the era of personalization from a technology standpoint, right? So if they want a movie on Netflix, right, they can get it right now, but they can also go to the physical movie theater, right? They want all. And so providing that power of choice so that you can meet the learner in the context that they're ready at that moment, right, is a way that technology, as well as the online offline hybrid, right, is gonna work pretty well.
So this notion of online offline hybrid is interesting because that's the essence of social media. A lot of people forget that, is that the reason social media works is because we have relationships with each other. And so that's one of the areas that a lot of leaders are leery to put a toe in the water in because of the perceived risk. And actually, Kimberly and Nakara and I were talking about social media and the progression that's been made over the last few months. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about leaders, what you would advise leaders who are thinking about realizing that their brand is important, or people who are trying to establish leadership or emerging leaders and they're trying to establish their presence. What things would you recommend based on your own experience with becoming a continuous learner with social media?
Who do you want to start, Kurt?
Don, why don't you start?
And I'll be brief. One of the things that people they're interested in putting forth their perspective online, but they're scared of the backlash if they do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we're dealing in an arena of interest that is also overburdened with a concern, right, for that negative outcome, right? And so as I advise leaders of how to build their brand and protect their company's brand, it's very simple. Crawl, walk, run, right? And so start by liking posts that you agree with. Just start there. And then comment on posts that you agree with. Celebrate the successes and the promotions and the good ideas that other people put forth in the social stream. So you start to get used to the platforms, you get your voice out there, but you're not really taking a whole lot of risk, right? Mm-hmm. But you're in the arena. The second phase is then you add a more detailed comment to somebody else's talk track as you see a thread emerging. And then that final phase is where you have an opinion, right? But what I describe is you don't have to start out having a lot of opinions online, mm-hmm. perspectives online. You can build up by being a champion for others, by forwarding and promoting the good things that you see in your company, in your teammates, in brands that you believe in. And then you naturally, with those smaller commentaries, will find your personal voice. The final thing I would say on that is that it is a skill that can be learned and will be needed over time. So it doesn't matter how much you jump in right now. As long as you get started and develop momentum, you'll be better next week, the week after, and the year after.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn, particularly, that it might be something else next year. But back to the personal brand, the first impression, just think about it. If a college student comes to you and wants to hear your advice, you get a call from a prospective client and the meeting gets set. Whatever it is, you're Googling their name because you mm-hmm. either are curious of who they are or you want to be best prepared for that conversation. And so the reality is, from a professional standpoint, you're probably going to LinkedIn. You're probably not going to pull up Nakara and I's profile on our JLL.com website. It just doesn't give you the full breadth of who we are. But you go to LinkedIn and you can tell what I do, where I've worked, what I like, what my interests are outside of just my day job, if you will, philanthropic, mm-hmm. who my clients are based on kind of interactions on celebrating their success. So yeah, I think Donald hit on it. There's a lot of apprehension, but the first time you plug in a name and they have like no footprint, you're kind of like, who are they? How engaged are they? So I'm a big proponent of it. I jumped in 2 years ago. It felt uncomfortable at first. Don't really like to talk a lot about myself or, celebrate that I've won an award or finished a project. Mm-hmm. And so that's just not me. But I had to put myself out there and realize that's my first impression. That's how I'm building a personal brand in kind of an easy way that's very low cost, if you will. And the reality is most people, that's where they're going right now professionally, to kind of see who is this person, yep. And how can I be best prepared for whatever conversation I'm having with them.
Great point.
Yeah, and to put a little spin on it, I think, we are fortunate at JLL because we do have such a great social media presence. So like Kim Marie, I've been probably posting more in the past year and a half and getting more comfortable with it, especially within LinkedIn. But, if you don't feel that comfortable, and if you're lucky like us, like work with your marketing teams to help you to come up with the content. Kim Marie's shaking her head, yes, to come up with the content that needs to be posted as you ease yourself into that. I mean, once again, we're very fortunate important to have that, or have someone review, what you were planning to post before it goes out there. But I do agree with you, Donald. You start small, you make that first, like, then you celebrate a comment, and then from there, you move into an opinion. But I think sometimes we want to jump in first to the opinion piece, and we get our hands spanked, or we're embarrassed, and then that kind of, we don't want to go back out there anymore. We're like, I'm done with this, right? So I do think there's a process. And if you're not, if you don't feel empowered to do it, look for the experts in your office to be able to assist with that, or friends, neighbors, whoever it is, to be able to assist you with that. Because there are some folks that I call like LinkedIn experts or social media experts that can really help to make us shine. So definitely tap into that.
That's well said. Sometimes the risk is you hear crickets when you post something, and that's okay, and you move on to the next thing. So that's how we learn what works and what doesn't. There's a question that came in through the Q&A that really helps to kind of put a finer point in the question, what we can take away from this. How do we apply things? So what do the different generations have to offer workplace that strengthens the whole? How do you integrate the generations to activate this synergy?
I'll start. I'll have a thought, and basically it's how do you blend multi-generational teams, right, to make the individual parts, right, the whole greater. I think it starts with kind of a rallying cry that people can work together that is outside of self, and that can be a new client acquisition. That can be a brainstorming session. One of the things that we've done pretty well with our clients at Walk West is when we're looking at a development project or a website or a content project, we've actually taken clients and done real-time workshops where we'll have a developer in the room, a content specialist in the room, social media in the room, client in the room, and we will brainstorm what their site should look like, sound like, feel like, and then do on-the-fly mini prototypes. And by having all of these different thoughts, different backgrounds, different generations, but working on something that at the end of that meeting, you don't have a finished product, but you definitely have a roadmap and you did something together, right? And that's how you create unity and harmony and teamwork, right? When you actually do and solve something together. And so I like to get people focused on something outside of them, that common cause in a bite-sized manner, and then give everybody that early win of working on something together. And that's how you start to gel things. And then the other piece is it raises the respect of your teammates. Because when you're doing it together real time, you'll see people kind of go, oh my, man, she is really smart. Oh my gosh, that was a great idea. And all of a sudden you get this cultural buzz and juice around attacking the problem, right? Versus the one-upmanships in traditional meetings, right? Of who has the right idea, who gets kudos from the boss. Attack the problem, and it's a unifying function. And now all of a sudden you become cheerleaders of each other because you're trying to beat the clock on the problem. And so that's one of the things we try to do.
So I would add something a little bit even more simplistic. How about we make sure that we're hiring folks of multiple generations, right? So in my industry, we've got the very seasoned, kind of baby boomers that have been doing construction and this type of work for years, and they bring an amazing value. And then we have those that are just coming out of school that are bringing, a different set of innovations. And so I just think it's important to really shy away from ageism as you're starting to, hire people, right? You really want to think about like the values that each of those folks can bring to your team. And then as you bring them on board, like meet them where they are, right? So don't pressure them, like you're a baby boomer. And I don't want to stereotype any baby boomers, but let's just say that they struggle with technology, right? Pair them with someone else on the team. Maybe it is, that Gen Xer or Gen Zer that is strong there, right? So you start to build that relationship. It becomes, that younger individual can learn information about the construction business while they're sitting together, while, the older individual can share, the older individual can share, information can be shared with them from the younger person around the technology piece. So I just say, just meet them where they are, but first start by building teams that support that in the workplace, because I am a firm believer in diversity of thought. And I think everyone has something to offer, especially in my industry, around the work that we do, because construction has been around for years, right? Buildings have been around for years. And, office spaces have been around just as much. And I just, for me, I feel like everyone brings a value, and I want to tap into that as much as possible, and help them to train and support one another as well.
That's good stuff.
And this question is directed to you, Donald, about your active listening during the session. And so what resources would you recommend to improve your presence? Because we're all going to be on Zoom a lot more than we have been. So how have you been able to?
One thing, because I'm a pretty serious person, like in terms of like get the job done, get things like, so I have a little note card and it says smile. Like I have to remind myself, right? Like that I'm having fun. These are people that I enjoy spending time with. I can get lost in a situation with that kind of win intensity. And so I have to remember, right, that work can be fun, right? The second thing that I do that's helped me a lot is I do take a lot of notes. I'm a competitive learner, right? I may not use everything in the 3-page of notes that I have, but I'm going to take one thing from everybody that I heard. I'm going to give credit back to you guys sometimes, but sometimes I'm going to wrap it up and it's going to be me, right? And I'm going to go forward with it. And so I really enjoy the learning process. And I think people can feel that, like when you're seeking to pull the best out of them. And then the final thing that I try to do is I remember that when I'm doing a presentation like this, or I'm pitching a client, right? Even though I'm not in person, energy is still contagious, right? Even though we're not like your energy, like I'll give one quick example because it's really important. There's a startup I invested in, and I can meet with them once a week, 45 minutes, like literally, like it's the only time that I have. But they are so fun. They are so excited that I can't wait till Friday morning at 8:30 to talk to these guys. And the young lady that's one of the co-founders and the guy, and they got good synergy, and they literally make my Friday better because their body language and their energy and their enthusiasm, no matter what they're facing, is so strong. And so you want to be that type of person that brings good energy, right, to no matter what kind of problem you're facing that day. And those are just some of the things that I try to do, and hopefully it comes across in what we're doing.
Thanks for sharing some of the secret sauce behind the scenes for everybody. So we've got a few minutes before the top of the hour, and we're going to end on time. And so the one thing I want to ask the panel, starting with Nakara, is what are things going to look like? This so-called new normal, which I'm not sure when we get there, but what do you think things are going to look like if you were to fast forward 12 months from today?
All right, so let me grab my crystal ball. Yeah.
Get your crystal ball out.
Shake it up.
So I am probably one of those folks that have a different, like just a different belief because of the nature of the work that I do. I think that things will go back to normal. I think that you're going to have some corporations that have found that they can be just as productive having people working from home as they do in the office, so that their spaces may be changing. But I really believe in collaboration. I really believe in culture. And I just feel like if you are behind a screen and your employees are behind a screen, like there is no allegiance to the company. There's no way to really build that culture from behind a screen, right? So I think, those companies that really value that and really want to retain the best talent and want to just continue that legacy over the life of their company, they'll find the way for things to get back to normal. So that's just my mindset. I think the culture of the company will drive what is next for that company and how they work in their space.
Yep. No, I echo that with Nakara. Someone shared a thought as well. It really depends what your expectations are.
Yeah.
Everyone's handling this differently. And for the first time, we've seen our personal and professional lives, those lines blurred in a way we've never seen before. And it's good and it's been uncomfortable, but I don't think that's going away, regardless of where somebody works 2 years from now. And so we've really incorporated that human side into the business. And hopefully it's going to build stronger relationships in the end. But there will really be, when you think about normal, there'll be two perspectives. How does things look and how do things feel? Somebody said it best too. We used to close with our emails sincerely or regards. And now it's stay safe, stay healthy, hope you're well. So even that little nuance, when I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, you're right. So I think that's going to impact what the normal is. And again, it goes without saying, flexibility. I mean, we all know we don't have a crystal ball, even in the CRE industry, given we're the second largest of what we do in the world. But we do know people are going to want flexibility, and companies are going to have to incorporate flexibility into their business plans at all kind of turns in the road.
Yeah, for me, and I'm so appreciative of this moment to spend with you guys. The last thing that I will say is that learning agility, like we talked about in the pillars, in terms of we're in this unpredictable space, and we're going to be there for a little while, right? Whether it is COVID, the economy, we've got an election coming. There's a lot of change on the forefront. And so I think to be able to apply new information and new experiences quickly in your business context is kind of the skill that's going to be here to stay, so that we can continue to be competitive in our various fields of endeavor and figure out how to win while serving our people well at the same time.
Excellent. Well, that puts a bow on the conversation for today. Thank you, Don, Kimberly, and Nakara for participating today.
Thank you for having us.
Had a great time. If you want to connect with any of us, we're active on LinkedIn. You can download the white paper by finding the link in the chat, and I'm also going to share that on the screen after we leave. So feel free to follow us also on social media, both Walk West, the Diversity Movement, and JLL Carolinas on social media for latest insights, events, and resources. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on another webinar soon in the future. Thanks again.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, guys. It's great. Let's talk to you guys. Good job, Kurt. Put us together.
Thank you.